Okay. Miss Ray, what can you do to stop taking too much notes? What do you mean? Mingjing, elaborate on that. What do you mean by too many notes? Too long on a
Like,
lecture.
I, oh,
What? Go ahead.
so it's like I just can't. You just can't stop, but like kind of copying everything that people set down onto a paper, and then I don't. I just feels like everything is important, and it takes like super long time to do every video now due to this reason.
Um, yeah, I totally get it. You're talking about the AP lecture videos.
But yeah.
Probably the one suggestion I might have, especially considering the fact that with those lecture videos, the idea is that you should already know a lot of it. So probably what the preference would be is one thing that you might want to consider is just listening to it and then writing and then kind of trying to summarize it. So kind of like as if you were watching a movie and then didn't have any notes and then spend 10 minutes summarizing it. Because in theory, you already know the vast majority of it. That would be the hope. So that would be my suggestion. Another thing that you could do too is you could just write down like 1 to 2 word notes. So like if they say, all right, you really need to know about the New South, write down New South or something like that. And you can always go back and reference it. That would be probably my best suggestion. Because in theory, you already know it. It should just be a review for you. You could also grab out your notes and star the things that they're saying in the lecture on your notes. That would be another suggestion I would have.
Yeah. I see. Thank you.
Yeah. By the way, before we start, because we still have a couple of people coming in, I wanted to show you guys something. So first off, did you guys all see the article that I sent to everybody? It's not pulling off, but did you guys see that? Anybody? The rankings for Skyline? Well, that was pretty cool. So, I thought it was really cool. All the ones that weren't us were charters. So we were the #1, which is up from 3 points from last year. So that's really good. I'm trying to show you this really cool map. I thought you guys might want to see this. So this is a map of all the schools in... Sorry, guys. We're having tech issues when I stream. Anyways, if it comes back up, I have a really cool map to show you that has all the schools and all the states. Look, now it's pulling up. Okay. There it is. Is my husband playing video games? No, he is not here. It's just... that's why I have to have everything pulled up, is because having Zoom with this many people, like, it is updated now. So we're actually the dark one. So we're the close for academic year. So this is updated. So all the ones that are in this dark blue right here, those are all closed for the rest of the school year. All the ones that are in this, like this weird thing is recommended to close for the rest of the school year. So they basically are closed for the rest of the school year. That's just not completely like required. So I just thought this would be something that's interesting. I've heard some people say that Utah's the only ones doing this. Maybe this gives it a little bit more of a perspective so that you can see like worldwide. I also saw somebody in the comments that said about the oil prices. Yeah, our oil prices went negative like 30. So $30 a gallon. So it's actually costing more money to sell a gallon or a barrel of gasoline versus what it's actually worth. So it's that's part of the reason they're trying to stabilize it, because I've heard a lot of people say that why is our gas still so expensive then? And the problem is because they're trying to stabilize the oil prices. And it is crude oil. You are correct. It's just crude oil ends up converting into gasoline, which ends up coming into us. So my apologies. Anyway, so overall, so a couple of things I wanted to show you. Just a reminder, anything that we have here is available on Canvas, which of course it's not going to come up because why would it? So just remember that you can always access it on here, and you can be able to see all these available at any time. Hopefully you're able to start practicing and things like that. And now we're going to go over this. So hopefully everybody had an opportunity to at least try. If you did not, we're going to go over this for about 5 to 7 minutes. So if you want to just like mute me and see when we switch off of that, if you didn't have the opportunity to sort this and you still want to be able to practice, in the chat, will you make sure to put if there's any terms that you don't know, and then we can go ahead and go over these terms. The problem with period 6 is that period 6 overlaps so much that basically what happens is that, and give me a second, Tracy, when we get there, I'll address that one, I promise. But basically what happens is all of these overlaps would make more sense instead of doing chronological to just do categories. Now, one thing really quickly about progressives, I would not spend a lot of time, we're going to go over all the answers right now. I would not spend a lot of time going over progressives because that was last year's DBQ, so it's highly unlikely it'll be this year's DBQ, which is why we're not going to focus so much on that during today's review session. And I'll tell you today which ones I think. So we're going to start with Gilded Age and Second Industrial Revolution. So this one probably should have been one of the easier ones. It's all of your industrialists. Horizontal integration, vertical integration, laissez-faire, Second Industrial Revolution. Anybody have any questions about this Gilded Age, Second Industrial Revolution? Okay, the reason why I would know these terms is a great HC. So when we go to look at in just a second the possible essay topics for period 6, this would be the perfect HC for almost all period 6 essays. So this is a really good one that I would have. You can have Gilded Age, Second Industrial Revolution, whatever. It causes immigration. It causes progressive movement. Last year's DBQ, this was the #1 HC was Gilded Age and then Second Industrial Revolution. Okay, now immigration is the one that I would know a lot about. And here's the reason why. They have not had an immigration DBQ since 1991. So I would make sure to study it because a lot of teachers are saying the 2 most likely DBQs for this year are Jackson and immigration. So I would extra study. Somebody says vertical and horizontal integration mixed up. Is there any way to help that out? It's just kind of tricky. I just think of vertical integration as every single part. So as you go down, it's vertical downwards of every single part. Versus horizontal, that's everything is the same part of it. I think of the McDonald's thing because vertical integration means that they have to own the cows that produce the meat, the plants that produce the tomatoes, the box making factory that creates the boxes for them, and then that goes up and down. And then horizontal is everything the same, so only the McDonald's, but they don't own every part. It's a tricky one to be able to remember. I just think of McDonald's every time I think of it, and then it kind of helps me out just a little bit. That's just personally me. So in terms of immigration, somebody asked before about what is the Third Ward. So Little Italy, Chinatown, and the Third Ward are all examples of what we call ethnic communities. And ethnic communities are basically that's where the ethnicities go. So if you think about, for example, and I don't think we have any in Salt Lake that are really big. I do know that we have an Asian community that is in downtown Salt Lake, but I don't know if I would necessarily call it an ethnic community. But when you go to a big city like New York or San Francisco or things like that, you have these ethnic communities where you know where to go to find that ethnic community. That's what each of these are. So Little Italy, Italians. Chinatown, the Chinese. Third Ward, you're like, what? Third Ward is Irish. So Third Ward is the Irish communities, in particular in New York, the ones that are going to create like the Brooklyn Bridge and things like that. So it's a really good effect of immigration is the creation of these towns. The Third Ward does still exist. It's just not one that is, these answers are on Canvas. That is correct. If you go to the period 6 review, it says check your work, and all of this is on there available. So Third Ward still is there where there's a large amount of Irish American communities, but it's not really called the Third Ward anymore. There's just a lot of Irish that live there. Any other questions in general about immigration? And again, we'll go over this when we go over the IDs as well. So, okay, next one And this is another one that I would know too, because a few of the essay topics for the review sessions are specifically on migration patterns, and westward migration is a possibility for that. So just remember westward migration, manifest destiny stuff that we've talked about before. Alan, are you talking about the DBQ from yesterday? Well, the problem is we only had 105 people out of 149 do it. So I want to be careful about talking about the DBQ. So probably what I'll do is I will grade them. So I want to get all the AP grade, everything updated on Friday. And then I will probably send out a message with an unlisted DBQ or an unlisted YouTube video of the corrections to make on that. But I'm waiting a couple of days because, again, a lot of people did not do that. When we start doing more practice, I'll kind of be able to show you some ideas on the timed essays. If you were going all the way up until the 60 minutes, you only have 15 or you only have 45 on the AP exam. So what I would like to do is probably see, because that's our first timed essay, see what people did well on and what people didn't, and then we can go over suggestions on how to be able to speed that up. Okay? Movement, will we have dot for not having conclusion? No, it's just it's a way to make sure you get the thesis point is all. So you're good. Westward migration, Native Americans, and then you also have going into the populism stuff that we've talked about before. And then this New South and Lost Cause. This is the one that is the required video that I'm having you do. We talked about this for like 10 minutes because it is a single key concept. And for some reason, they decided to put that as one of the main essay topics on their review. What that tells me is I think one of the essays is going to be on the New South, which is going to be very hard. They had a DBQ a few years ago that was the alternate exam on the New South, and it was one of the lowest scoring essays that they've ever had. So I'm very surprised that they have brought it back. So once I see, I'm going to watch their video and I want to know what they want to emphasize because that supposedly is what's going to be on the AP exam. And then we'll go over it more. The New South was basically the South becoming industrialized. So moving away from agriculture now that they don't have slavery and becoming a more industrialized society. And the lost cause is the idea that it is the sympathetic to the South. So, basically what happens with this lost cause is the idea that slavery and the pride of the South is a lost cause. It's very much a sympathetic to the South. It is very much a states' rights. These are the textbooks that you these are the textbooks that say, for example, that slavery or the Civil War was the war of northern aggression. That's all lost cause. Somebody asked, is there a solid list of key concepts? Yes. And I could send that out and show you where you can find that. However, when you go to read it, you're going to be very confused. So just be aware of that. And then populism and free silver is connected to farmers. If you don't know that, please go and study populism. That was a DBQ a couple of years ago. 90%.
Is populism on the government political reform as well?
It could be, yeah. You could count it as a political reform. I don't think I put it there, but you could have. That's fine. But in particular, the Populist Party, 80% of members of the Populist Party were farmers. And it was created from the Farmers Alliance, and the farmers would have benefited from free silver. So please make sure to study that with populism. Remember, populism was the idea that the farmers were being destroyed by the monopolies and things like that. So they wanted more government power into the economy. They wanted to control the trusts, and in particular, the 16-to-1 ratio of the free silver movement, because many farmers and miners and things like that would have benefited from silver compared to gold as the standard in the United States. This one's really important, by the way. Again, they did an entire DBQ on it. And based on the writing that they've said, it could come into there's 3 essay topics that could have populism as part of it. So definitely study with populism. Okay, so going into some of the reforms, women's rights. I don't think it's going to be on a lot of this simply because progressives was last year. Religious-based reform, I would know because it in particular benefited immigrants. So this would be a really good cause and effect essay, CCOT, about immigrants and things like that. The vast majority of this stuff benefited immigrants, in particular the settlement houses and Jane Addams, as well as social gospel and things like that. Journalism in general, muckraking. Again, I don't think that this will be the AP exam because this was last year's AP exam, was on the progressive movement. But you could possibly see, especially how the other half lives is probably the most popular one that you would see. Maybe one on trusts and their abuse of immigrants. Immigrants were highly liked by trusts because they could pay them significantly less than somebody who is white and a citizen. Government and political reform, I would know this one for political machines, and in particular, their connection to immigrants. Remember, the vast majority of political machines were powered, I suppose you could say, by the immigrants. So basically, as the immigrants were able to gain the right to vote, they would vote in the political machines that would therefore help the immigrants. That's probably the most likely one you would see. 16th Amendment, I doubt will be on there because that is income taxes to fund the progressive movements. 17th Amendment, secret ballot initiative, referendum, and recall are all ways to control the political bosses. So this could be a good outside evidence, a good complexity point, or something like that. Consumer and business reform, I don't think that you'll see because that was last year's AP exam, DBQ. You might see socialism and Eugene Debs, simply because those two terms did have something to do with immigrants, although a lot of socialists did not like immigrants, so kind of weird there. Prohibition and temperance, this could be a good effect of immigration because this especially rises after the Germans bring over, and Germans and the Irish bring over a lot of alcohol. Environmental reform, I don't think you'll see because, again, that was last year's AP exam. Social welfare reform is one I would know because social welfare reform in particular is going to be impactful for immigrants, which it seems like a lot of the things are migration. Prohibition was the 18th Amendment. You can remember that because at 18 you can't drink, but at 21 you can. That's 18 versus 21, which repeals the 18th Amendment. And then African Americans, again, I don't think you'll see it in particular because the NAACP was a direct document on the AP exam last year, but who knows what the AP exam is going to do, okay? So in terms of overall, and I should have had this up last time, but I didn't, which is fine. I don't know why. It's probably because we were streaming music and now everything's all messed up. 1 second. Because this is like our activity, so I kind of need this. 1 second. Well, I'll just talk about it really quick while I'm trying to reload this. So anyways, so what I should have done last time is I should have done these essay review topics. So remember, those essay review topics are the most likely that I would guess the AP exam topics. So these are the ones from period 7. So last time when we did our review session, this is what you should have learned from that review session. So explain the similarities and differences in attitudes about the nation's proper role in the world. That probably would have best been imperialism, World War I, World War II. Isolationism versus interventionism. Those are all the ones that I would have talked about, similarities and differences. So like, for example, how did we act after World War I? What should we have acted? How is that similar or different to imperialism? What did we change? Different things like that. The second one, and I'm going to especially talk about this later, explain the causes and effects of international internal migration patterns over time. So in period 7, that would include immigration, so the second wave of immigration. That would include the Great Migration of African Americans would be another one. Explain the causes of the Great Depression and its effects on the economy. They have not asked a New Deal DBQ in a long, long, long time. So that also might be a good one that you might want to be able to study as well. Now, in terms of period 6 for today, I'm going to, in particular, as we go through these different documents, I'm going to be really emphasizing these are ones that I would use here, here, and here, or whatever it could possibly be. Now, this New South one, we're not going to focus on a ton, mostly because I really want to see what they're going to talk about. It's a very, very small topic to write an entire DBQ on that is your AP grade. So I want to hold off on this until I see what they want me to teach and then kind of go from there. But I want you to notice once again, this explain how cultural and economic factors affected migration patterns over time. And then once again, international and internal migration. This tells me that I would really study immigration and migration, westward migration, immigration, movement in the United States, movement to the United States. So as we go through a whole bunch of these IDs, especially when we hit ones that are really focused on immigration or migration, I would in particular do this. So these are the prompts that I sent out that are the College Board review session prompts. So these are the ones that each of the different essays or the different videos are supposed to be about. So I in particular would, again, a lot of teachers are saying it's going to be an immigration DBQ this year. So as we go through these, I would really especially note and think to yourself, how does this connect to immigration or migration as a whole? Because I think those are going to be the most likely ones. And I'll try to point those out as we go through these IDs. So let's start our activity. So here is what you need to do. You need to have out, again, a piece of paper, something to write on, your phone out that you can be able to take notes on, computer, I don't really care, but we're going to go ahead and go through our IDs today. So if you weren't here last time, I'm going to show you a document, and your goal is to write down a term, an idea, a concept that has to do with that individual document. Try to be specific. So rather than just going big into, like, for example, propaganda or migration, try to be specific, because this will be, for example, what you would see on the AP exam. All right, you guys can do this. I know it. So let's get started. Everybody have something, pen, pencil, brain. Good. Okay. So remember, I'm going to give you about 10 seconds or less. You want a quick ID. You should be able to see these and know them. If you don't know it, just circle it. There are 43 or 44 on this one, just like last time. So there was 142 terms, I believe it was, and I narrowed it down to what I felt like was the most important. And some of them might repeat depending on how you interpret the document. Okay? That's funny. I actually saw a redo of that for quarantine. It was pretty funny. Okay. Anyways, all right, so let's go ahead and let's get started. So remember, have something out. And again, my computer's being weird, so I can't make it big, so hopefully everybody can see it. Okay, ready? And let's go. So remember, you're trying to ID what this document is trying to tell you. Okay, next one. And this one's kind of goes in between the two periods. So if you're like, wait, is this period 7? It can be for both. It was on your test a month ago. Okay, next. And these can be ideas as well, not just a term. Okay, next. All right, next. All right, next. Now this one's hard, and I'm throwing it in there, and I know it's hard. So if you don't know it, that is okay. All right, next. Okay, next. And this one, by the way, the term is covered, so you have to think a little harder. All right, next. This one's also hard. Okay, next. This one's also more of an idea rather than a specific term. Okay, next. All right, next. All right, next. All right, next. And this one is, I really like this one. I know it's kind of hard to be able to read, but hopefully you can figure out what it means. All right, next. And don't put Little Italy. That's not what I want you to put. All right, next. All right, next. And in particular, this is also referring to a specific event. All right, next. Let's see if you guys can figure this one out. I chose a hard one for this one. All right, next. Hopefully this one's easy. All right, next. There's lots of ones you could do for this one. All right, next. And this is talking about a specific event. Hi, buddy. All right, next. Yes, the dog is here. Okay, next. Now this one's hard. We'll see if you can get it. This one is a difficult one. All right, next. No, I'm not giving you food right now. All right, next. And this one, I'm looking for a specific person, and it's not Teddy Roosevelt. Trying to see if you can figure out who the guy on the left is. All right, next. In this one in particular, I'm looking for a specific, it is a specific term, which will be more obvious when I tell you what that term is. All right, next. Hopefully this one should be obvious. All right, next. All right, next. All right, next. We'll see if you can get this one. So what's the blocked out letters? All right, next. All right, next. Now this one is hard. It is a specific term. A group of people. It's a specific term for a group of people. I will guess 90% of you will not get this one. All right, next. It is political cartoons are, and it's so interesting because we don't use them very much now compared to before. I really like this one. I've never seen this one before today, but I'm a huge fan of this one. It will be memes. Oh. I have seen a lot of a lot of teachers have been making DBQs on the coronavirus, and I totally could see it as the future. And a bunch of them have memes and tweets, and it'll be weird when you guys as kids come to Miss Ray for a push. All right, next one. And it is, memes are very similar. And this, by the way, is a very specific term, but I chose a very hard picture for this term. So if you don't get it, that's okay. But I chose a very hard picture specifically for this term. All right, couple more. So we can get done in time. Okay, this one. Okay, next. And this one is also hard. So I'm trying to give you harder ones so that it makes your brain work a little bit harder. All right, next. And please don't put lynching. I'm looking for a specific muckraker in particular on this one. All right, next. All right, next. This is an event, by the way. All right, next. And you don't know this person, just let you know. But it's the idea behind it, but you do not know this person. All right, and the last one, or second to last one, excuse me, I have two more. All right, and the last one, I'm just adding him in there because I feel like I can't do period 6 without having his face in this PowerPoint. And hopefully it'll remind you of what idea he created. But I mean, I just thought you needed to see his beautiful face. Okay, let's see how well you guys did. So, get out your correcting utensil. Again, the goal would be 60% or higher. How you guys feeling? If you don't remember his name, it's fine. But if you remember what he created, that's actually what you need to care about, is what he created. The fact that he's hot, please don't write that in your essays. Especially don't write that Miss Ray told you to write about how hot he is. Okay. All right. So let's see how well you guys did. Again, 60%. Hopefully you guys are feeling a little bit confident-ish. Maybe. We'll see. Okay. So let's go through our answers. Yay. Answers. Okay. First one. This is John D. Rockefeller, Standard Oil Company, and in particular, history of the Standard Oil Company. That's one of those iconic muckraking ones that it exposed all the bad things that John D. Rockefeller did. He ended up retiring because of the book. You can see this has a horrible monster down here ruining everybody's lives. Okay, next one, social Darwinism. This is probably the most famous example of social Darwinism that we've seen before. This one for political machines or this last one? This one would not be political machines because political machines are specific to local government, not trusts. I would have accepted imperialism too, it's just imperialism was not a period 6 term. So social Darwinism comes from period 6, but imperialism would have been just fine as well. Second wave of immigration. And make sure you know on these immigration ones, causes and effects. When we review, I'm going to go through each of the different essay topics and review them. I will hit a little bit better on Latin American and Canadian immigration. They're not even a key concept, but I'm going to add it in just in case, because who knows what College Board's going to do. But really do causes and effects of European and Asian immigrants. The octopus, which is Frank Norris, I also would have accepted monopolies, trust, the robber barons, all that fun stuff. But this one is specifically referencing the book The Octopus, which was about the railroad industry killing everybody, and in particular the farmers in California. How the Other Half Lives, Jacob Riis, Tenements, all of the above. Again, this is one I would definitely know for immigration. I feel like, so every DBQ is required to have at least one visual, and I feel like if you're going to have any visual of immigrants, Jacob Riis is like the guy. Just remember, 90% of his stuff was fake. So he paid everybody to pose like this. So, but anyways. And then Tenements as a general whole is the tenement life and things like that. Okay. This was the New South. And again, I'm going to wait really to focus on the New South till I know what they want me to teach. How you would have known it's the New South is because it says first carload of steel made in Birmingham, Alabama. That's showing industrialization in the South. Women's suffrage, just as a whole. That one is hard. Again, they had a New South one a couple years ago as the alternate exam, and it was really badly done. So I'm really surprised to see it come back again. This one's the melting pot, the world's melting pot. It is used for World War I and things like that. It's just this was the best image I could find for melting pot. But melting pot comes from immigration. Again, immigration starts in 1890 and ends really in 1920. And that's in period 7 and 6. So it goes back and forth. I don't know. I just Googled it. I really didn't look super into that. Sorry. Melting pot at this time is a negative connotation. Melting pot today is considered positive. But at the time, melting pot was bad because, again, you have all this scum and all these problems from the immigrants coming in. This one's the lost cause theory. So if you notice, these are actually, it's called the human Confederate flag. So each of these are people that dressed up. And in particular, it was painted this way to show that all of these humans are actually supporting the Confederate flag. You have Robert E. Lee that's up here. It says, and Twill lived in this song and story through life its fulls and in the dust. This is all going to be lost cause theory. Anything that is pro-South after the Civil War and after Reconstruction is going to be lost cause. This one's consumerism, mail order catalogs, conscious consumption, buy. This is the start of the very first department store. You can see all these women going and buying all this stuff and having their custom made clothes. This one was a little bit of a harder one. This would be a really good one if they have anything about like movement west and the need for the mail order catalog, the increase of consumerism with the Transcontinental Railroad and things like that. And yeah, Tracy, what you said reminds me of that image of the Know Nothing Party where it says Native Americans only. That always reminds me. Could you say that women's rights because they like can buy their own stuff now? I would say a lot of this is still confined to the cult of domesticity, but I would say there is an increase of consumerism for females. But I would be careful about saying massive expansion of women's rights until after the 19th Amendment and World War I and things like that, because that's really what changes it. Assembly Line Mortality. This one is temperance prohibition. These poor little kids, their parents are drinking themselves to death. Sad. Transcontinental Railroad. I also think it's interesting because it shows the Native Americans down here, but it does show the two are coming together at the very famous Promontory Point. Although it's technically Promontory Summit. This one is Preservation National Park System Antiquities Act and John Muir. You can see it says the United States, you need to be careful, Uncle, I'm getting mighty thin on top, and then he's preserving all the things at the top. I kind of like that cartoon. I just love Teddy Roosevelt, though. So that's another thing. Ethnic communities, Little Italy, Third Ward, Chinatown, things like that. Trust busting. So busting up all the trusts. Pullman Strike, which I realized afterwards, I forgot to mark this off, but this is in particular. Mary, yes, the PowerPoint, I am recording this, so it'll be online as soon as this is done. But this is already available online as well. Pullman Strike, low wages, high rent, squishing them, and strikes and different things like that. Political machines, Tammany Hall, Boss Tweed. This is always the classic Boss Tweed pose. And you can see it says bribery, corruption right underneath their nose. Great one for immigrants. I would definitely keep in mind political machines would be a great outside evidence point if you get an immigration question, depending on what it is. Assimilation. Cross of Gold speech, William Jennings Bryan and Populism. Remember, this was William Jennings Bryan, very famous speech where he said Americans are being killed on the Cross of Gold and the Crown of Thorns and things like that. Indian boarding schools would have been fine for assimilation as well. I would have accepted either one. Plessy v. Ferguson. That's what this event was talking about. Separate but equal. Women's Christian Temperance Union in particular, but also would have accepted temperance or prohibition. Again, I don't think this will be on the AP exam, though, because that was last year's exam. This one is the Dawes Act, which is one that I think we've forgotten a lot about. Dawes Act is when basically the American government consolidated the reservation system and then basically began selling off major parts of the reservation system. So, for example, the Ute land went down about 90%. They then took all that Ute land and sold it off to people. And then that's when we overtake a lot of that land, which is why we have such small reservations today. So like Vernal and things like that was because of the Dawes Act. Homestead Act is earlier in 1965. The Dawes Act is specifically Native American land. You have to remember that the Homestead Act did not specifically take away Native American land, as in take it and sell it. It's just you got the land no matter what. So it's a little bit different between the two. Dawes Act is in particular the sale of Native American land. Homestead Act is just in general moving west and being given land. I know it's a little bit confusing between the two. On the AP exam, you would have a date on this, and that would help you out to know as well which is the comparison between the two. Scientific management and Taylorism. You can see they're making robots. W.E.B. Du Bois was the guy that was here on the left. His face is just kind of an iconic face at the time. Remember, though, he advocated more for acceptance and working together compared to full equality for Native Americans, or not Native Americans, African Americans, excuse me. Tenements. Again, this one was really hard. I just needed a good one for tenements. So anything that looks like really crowded environments and things like that would be that. The last one was W.E.B. Du Bois. Okay. Muckrakers, The Jungle, Upton Sinclair, one of my favorites. AP exam 2 years ago, though. Manifest Destiny and Westward Expansion. So this is one of the most, so I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a benefit. We usually do this as an activity, but I don't know why, but we just never did it. This painting is a painting called American Progress. It's one of the most famous paintings in American history. And it shows, you can see that they're bringing the telegraph lines, the trains, the farmers and things like that. You can see over here it's being pushed away by Native Americans in Buffalo. You can see East Coast versus West Coast. This is actually Manhattan, and you could tell because of its shape. She's American Progress. She holds the Bible. She's Lady Liberty because she has a star on her head. The author or the painter of this never said if it was pro or anti-Westward immigration. So you have to decide for yourself, which is it? Is it showing it's a good thing? Is it showing it's a bad thing? It's your interpretation of it. It's never been said. Most people, though, would say that this is a pro, and it's simply because you have to remember at the time we were very much manifest destiny. So you can see we're bringing the light to the darkness, and even though they're running away, it's a good thing because look at all the wonderful things we're bringing with them. We're bringing farming, we're bringing people, trains, all that stuff. And even though it looks very negative, you can see that there's dead buffalo everywhere. Most people would interpret this as a pro-manifest destiny. Although most people today would say it's not. This one's populism. You can see it's the People's Party, Free Silver, Farmers Alliance, Old Granger. I like how it says right here, the platform of lunacy, because it's definitely an anti-populism cartoon. This cartoon was on the AP exam a couple years ago with the populism one. Socialism, which I also realized I forgot to mark out socialism, sorry. But anytime you see Eugene Debs, you know it's socialism. This one is going to be anti-populism, and you can tell that because it says on here the platform of lunacy. So that's how you know that it's anti, and it's a party of patches. It's basically showing it's not a real party. It's just a bunch of parties coming together saying that they're a party. So this would be anti-populism. Most people were anti-populism, though. So almost all the cartoons you will see are anti-populism. Chinese Exclusion Act. That one should have been easier. Knights of Labor. So this was so you should have at least gotten strikes, maybe labor unions and things like that. You know this is the Knights of Labor because it says the chivalry of modern knights. That's the Knights of Labor. You can see they're boycotting things like that. If you're going this to immigration, I would make sure to know that labor unions did not like immigrants. They hated immigrants because immigrants were taking the jobs. So almost all labor unions were against it. Somebody asked, what is the difference between socialism and populism? Very, very different. Socialism is common. So if you see this one right here, collective ownership, machinery, production, and distribution of all people. The earth is for all people. Populism did not believe everything should be the same. What they believed in, it should be fair to lower income people. So for example, going on the silver standard, that would give benefits to some of the poorer farmers and miners. Government control over the economy, making sure there's no monopolies and trusts. So socialism is everybody is the same. Populism is more the idea of the little guy being able to still have a say in their government. So there's actually a lot of people that say that we are in a populist society now, where a lot of like libertarianism, for example, is popping up, where it's the common people wanting a say. Socialism isn't the common people. Socialism is more low income, which I wouldn't say is necessarily common people, versus populism, which is specifically the common man, the farmer, the outdoorsman, the rural communities wanting a say rather than the big cities and things like that. That would be the major difference between the two. Where were we? Andrew Carnegie, Gospel of Wealth. You can see he's giving all of his money to everybody. Yay. This one is specifically settlement houses. You can see what's the difference between Gospel of Wealth and Social Gospel? Gospel of Wealth is the idea that rich people should give away all their money. So you can see that he wrote the book Gospel of Wealth. That's where the term comes from. You can see Carnegie is giving out all of his money for the public good. So this is the idea that the rich people should give away. So I don't know, for example, if you guys saw, and I think I gave this example in class, but this one's different. So Taylor Swift, for example, is really big into giving charity. And I don't know if you guys saw what she did a couple of weeks ago, but she went on Twitter and on Tumblr to her fans that had tweeted her and things like that. She saw that some of her fans were saying that they didn't have any money because of coronavirus. And so she DM'd them and said, "Hey, what's your PayPal?" They gave her the PayPal, and she gave them $5,000. And she ended up giving what's known, I think it was 150 people, $5,000 to be able to get through the coronavirus and different things like that. So that would be an example of gospel of wealth, is the idea that you as a rich person have so much that you need to give back. And that's the idea of gospel of wealth. Social gospel is the idea that as a Christian, you need to give back. So God, or not God, I shouldn't say, sorry. Jesus Christ did charity. What would Jesus do? He did charity. So what should you do if you want to be like Jesus? Give charity. So that's really the idea of Christianity. So an example that I can give you, for instance, is Thomas Rhett, who's a really famous country star. He said that basically that God gave him the ability to sing, to give back to people. And basically his idea is that Christianity has pushed him to be more charitable. So he donates every week. I think it's like $10,000 per week to different charities. And he always puts in his tagline when he donates it, for God and country, because he does it as a Christian. So anything that is very much a Christian-based thing is the idea of giving charity and things like that. So that's the difference. So anyways, this is settlement houses. You can see, shall we bury the slums or shall the slums bury us? Starting from the first houses, things like that. So this is actually the creation of the settlement houses in New York City. That one was really hard, but throw it in there. This next one, Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire. So this would be a really good outside evidence point to issues with immigrants. The vast majority of people who died in the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire were Italian, Russian, Eastern European immigrants. Part of the confusion was because none of them could speak English and they couldn't speak the same language. And so you had a huge issue. A lot of Jewish immigrants as well died in that. So a really good one that you could put in there as a negative effect of immigration or of industrialization, whatever it could be. Almost done. This one's City Beautiful movement. So this is actually the creation of the National Mall. And basically that was, again, the idea of these really big cities with tenements and disgustingness and things like that. You have to have some sort of thing in there to make it more beautiful. So this could be an effect of immigration. Or, for example, you have one of your documents is tenements. You could add in there, they attempted to fix the tenements by creating the City Beautiful movement, talking about Central Park and things like that. Anything that is a big city, but it looks like there's a lot of green, is always going to be the City Beautiful movement. Ida B. Wells' anti-lynching campaigns. She was a muckraker. Lewis Hine and child labor, so child labor laws and different things like that. Homestead strike, you can tell because it says Homestead Mills, Pinkertons, Carnegie, that's the Homestead. Robber barons, monopolies, and trusts. This was actually one of the railroad robber barons. Square deal, which I meant to cross that out, but that's fine. But I love how this is like Teddy Roosevelt and he's like a giant block. I think that's funny. But anyways, this would also be, I think it's a negative portrayal of Teddy Roosevelt's square deal. And then finally, Walter Rauschenbusch, otherwise known as the social gospel. Homestead strike, remember, was where Andrew Carnegie was over in Scotland, and they were striking and things like that. They were protesting their rights. So Henry Clay Frick locked everybody out and banned them from coming in. And basically all the workers came in and they were doing this protest. Frick hired the Pinkertons, which was the private detective agency. You can see it actually says 3,000 Pinkertons. That's how many showed up. And then they ended up coming to break up the strike. They ended up firing and killing multiple strikers. So Homestead, and it actually ruined Carnegie's career. He ended up selling off the Homestead Mill, retiring, and then that's when he started to really give back with Gospel of Wealth. But it ruined Carnegie's career because people saw him as like really, really, really bad. Also, notice in here, wanted 4,000 foreign pauper laborers. That's immigrants. So a lot of times the reason why strikers and labor unions did not like immigrants is because during the strikes, they would hire immigrants. So those are what are called scabs, which are people that cross the line in the strike, and immigrants would take anything they could to get out of poverty. Okay, so that is it. So count up to see how many you got right and wrong. Hopefully you got about 60%-ish, 50 to 60%. Obviously, some of them were much harder than others, but hopefully that gave you a little bit of an idea. We'll keep doing this. 73% is pretty good, though, because some of these were, like, really hard. So that's pretty good. Overall, you always want to do about 60 to 70%, and if you missed one, that's something you need to study. So now you know, okay, I need to study this, I need to study that, and you can kind of be able to look a little bit more. Visual sources tend to be the hardest sources to identify on the AP exam. People misunderstand them. So, like, for example, people would see this and be like, oh, this is positive towards Andrew Carnegie and the Pinkertons. It's not. So a lot of people just misunderstand and misinterpret the different things, okay? You don't have to turn anything in. This is review. This is for your benefit, not me. There's no assignments based on this. This is so that you can practice. Okay, so Friday, same time, we'll do the same thing. I'll send out the list a little bit earlier. I thought I had made it a timed where it was going to send it out at a certain time because I finished it at like midnight. I didn't want to send it out. Apparently that didn't work. So I will send out the new list a little bit earlier. We'll do the same system where we'll go over the answers to the first part, and then we'll do the IDs. And then we'll do period 5, which is mostly going to be Civil War Reconstruction stuff, as well as immigration. So other than that, anybody have any questions or anything like that? Okay. So one of you I have a meeting with. So I need everybody but that one person to leave. And for the record, sending stuff at midnight, well, I don't want to wake it. Well, first off, I have 30 parents on there. And I don't think your parents want me to wake them up with the messages, so just let you know. Anyways, so if you're not that one person, you can go ahead and go, because I'm waiting for that one person. Actually, I don't even think that one person is on here. Oh, there she is. Yes. Okay, so everybody, I know, Tracy, I'm sorry. Tracy, you need to be here earlier next time because you were supposed to be our bot person. And then you didn't do that. And it made me sad. So we need you earlier to think of a bop so that we can listen to a good bop on Friday. Okay, I'm going to start bumping you guys, just to let you know. Valorant, I have not. I don't know what that game is. I've been playing Call of Duty Warzone. That's what I've been playing actively. We got a new TV, so that's what I've been playing so that Mark and I can play now at the same time. Okay, I'm going to start bumping you guys. Sorry. Sorry, guys. I have to meet with somebody. I love you all, though. Okay, Mariana, it's just us. Mariana, do you want to unmute yourself?
Okay, hi. Sorry.
That's okay. Let me end this recording really quickly so that